prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Brett Cooper, the conservative star from The Daily Wire, has officially taken over the role of Snow White, replacing Rachel Zegler, a decision that has set off a storm of controversy. Social media is ablaze with debate as people across the spectrum take sides on this unexpected switch. Zegler previously made waves with her fresh take on the classic Snow White story, aiming to modernize the tale by removing Prince Charming from the equation entirely. Her vision for Snow White was that of a self-sufficient leader, a character who wouldn't be waiting for a prince to come to her rescue. Instead, she would be the hero of her own story, a move that was both daring and divisive. Zegler's reinterpretation was seen as a bold step toward empowering the character. Yet it was met with significant pushback, especially from fans nostalgic for the original fairy tale. For many who grew up loving the classic version, this modern twist was a step too far. They longed for the traditional elements of the story, the ones that included Prince Charming and a happily ever after ending. To them, Snow White's timeless romance was irreplaceable, and the absence of that core element felt like a betrayal of the fairy tale they knew and cherished. It's easy to understand the frustration of those expecting the story they grew up with, only to find that the romance had been entirely removed. The sentiment was clear. If the formula worked before, why change it now? This shift in direction raised a larger question about whether classic tales should be modernized at all. Disney has already been facing plenty of criticism lately, not just for changes to the storyline, but also for its broader approach to reimagining these beloved characters. The initial controversy began when Disney cast Rachel Zegler, a Latina actress, as Snow White. While some applauded this move toward greater diversity, others argued that it strayed too far from the character's original depiction, one famously described as having skin as white as snow. This casting decision sparked a heated discussion about the balance between honoring the essence of classic characters and adapting them to reflect modern values. The debate only intensified when fans caught a glimpse of set photos revealing Disney's new vision for Snow White's world. As these images circulated, it became clear that this reimagining was more than just a fresh face in the lead role. It was a complete overhaul of the story's look and feel. The conversation around how far to go in updating these iconic characters to fit contemporary standards remains as charged as ever, with opinions split on whether tradition or transformation should lead the way. In the new adaptation of Snow White, Disney has made a significant change by drastically reimagining the roles of the seven dwarfs. In this modern version, only one character remains a dwarf, with the rest of the roles being filled by taller actors. This decision has left many fans puzzled and frustrated, questioning why Disney would deviate so far from the classic portrayal. Some have accused the studio of catering to political correctness at the cost of the story's integrity, arguing that these changes undermine the original magic of the tale. The controversy intensified when actor Peter Dinklage, a successful performer with dwarfism, publicly criticized Disney's approach. He called out the studio for perpetuating old stereotypes, even as they attempted to modernize other aspects of the film. Dinklage's remarks sparked a broader conversation about representation and sensitivity in Hollywood, emphasizing that progress shouldn't come at the expense of a group of people who have been historically typecast and marginalized. His comments added another layer of complexity to an already heated debate, raising questions about how to balance tradition with progressive storytelling. Disney initially tried to control the narrative, claiming that the leaked photos showing the new, taller cast members in place of the traditional seven dwarfs were fake. However, when fans scrutinized the images, they quickly saw through the studio's attempts at misdirection. Faced with undeniable evidence, Disney had no choice but to admit that they were indeed making substantial changes to one of their most beloved classics. This mishandling of the situation did little to calm the growing unrest. Instead, it felt like a betrayal to many loyal fans who believed the studio was trying to pull a fast one on them. Fairy tales have long been cherished as a means of escape, a way to step into a world of magic and wonder, free from the complexities of reality. They were never meant to be deconstructed or filtered through the lens of modern social critique. That's the sentiment being echoed by Brett Cooper, who has now taken on the iconic role of Snow White under the banner of the Daily Wire. Unlike Rachel Zegler's controversial interpretation, Cooper has come out strongly in defense of the classic love story, dismissing Zegler's more skeptical view of the prince. She argues that these tales, at their core, are about romance, adventure, and timeless ideals, concepts that shouldn't be erased in the name of modernity. Cooper's stance has struck a chord with many fans who feel that fairy tales should remain true to their origins. For these fans, these stories are not just tales. They are part of their cultural fabric, carrying the nostalgia of childhood memories. To them, the idea of altering these narratives too drastically feels like tampering with something sacred. Cooper's dedication to preserving the traditional elements of Snow White has rallied a large audience that views Disney's recent shifts as a betrayal of the stories they grew up with. But the story doesn't end there. The Daily Wire isn't just content with casting Brett Cooper as Snow White. They're creating an entirely new adaptation of the classic tale. That's right. 2 competing Snow White films are now in the pipeline, setting the stage for a cinematic showdown. The Daily Wire's version promises to be a return to the fairy tale's roots, a retelling that includes all the familiar elements: Prince Charming, true love's kiss, and the classic happily ever after. This approach is being positioned as a direct counter to Disney's reimagined Snow White, which has moved away from romance to emphasize a narrative centered around Snow White as a self-sufficient leader. The decision to have 2 contrasting Snow White films has sparked intense debate, transforming social media into a battleground of opinions.
Fans are fiercely choosing sides, with some praising the Daily Wire's commitment to the classic fairy tale formula, while others applaud Disney's efforts to bring a fresh, progressive perspective to the story. The debate isn't just about the characters or the plot lines. It's about what fairy tales should represent in a modern world. Should they evolve to reflect contemporary values, or should they stay true to the ideals that made them beloved across generations?
This rivalry between the Daily Wire and Disney has not only captured the attention of audiences, but has also led to a significant shift in Disney's strategy. Faced with the prospect of direct competition from a conservative media outlet, Disney is now doubling down on its modernized vision, determined to reframe its narrative as a more relevant, forward-looking version of the tale. The stakes have never been higher, and the company is feeling the pressure to deliver a Snow White that resonates with a new generation, even at the risk of alienating longtime fans. What began as a casting controversy has now evolved into a larger cultural conversation about tradition versus innovation in storytelling. Will audiences embrace Zegler's progressive, independent Snow White, or will they flock to Cooper's faithful portrayal that harkens back to the classic tale? The answer could signal a broader trend in the entertainment industry, one where traditional narratives are either preserved for their nostalgic value or reinvented to align with modern sensibilities. As these 2 films move toward their respective releases, all eyes will be on how they are received and what this battle of interpretations means for the future of classic storytelling. In the end, the outcome of this cinematic face-off could redefine how we approach the retelling of beloved fairy tales for years to come. Disney's live-action adaptation of Snow White was initially slated for release in 2024, but in a move that has surprised many, the studio recently announced they're pushing the premiere back to 2025. This decision has sparked widespread speculation. Some industry insiders believe that Disney is feeling the pressure from the intense backlash surrounding their new vision for the classic tale and needs more time to navigate the controversy. Others suspect that Disney might be strategically delaying the release to avoid a head-to-head clash with the Daily Wire's competing version of Snow White, which is rapidly gaining traction among fans of traditional fairy tales. Whatever the reason, it's clear that the backlash has forced Disney to take a step back and reassess its approach to this highly anticipated film. The stakes couldn't be higher. Snow White is more than just another film for Disney. It's a test of their ability to modernize classic stories while still appealing to their core audience. The studio has a lot riding on this movie, and another flop could have serious financial repercussions. Disney has already faced a string of disappointing box office returns from other recent live-action remakes. And if Snow White follows that trend, it could tarnish the company's reputation as the leader in family-friendly blockbusters. Meanwhile, the prospect of the Daily Wire's adaptation has added a new layer of complexity to the situation. The conservative media company is seizing this moment to present its version of Snow White as a return to the story's roots, with a narrative that celebrates traditional values and classic fairy tale elements. For the Daily Wire, this film represents a massive opportunity to prove that there's still a substantial audience out there that craves the magic and nostalgia of original storytelling, without the modern reboots that often come with altered characters and themes. If their version resonates with viewers, it could signify a shift in Hollywood's approach to adapting beloved tales. This brewing battle between the two versions has divided fans into passionate camps. On one side are those excited about Disney's modernized take, who argue that it's high time to leave outdated stereotypes behind. They support the reimagined Snow White as a self-reliant leader who doesn't need a prince to save her, seeing this as a step forward in making these classic tales more inclusive and empowering for a contemporary audience. These fans view Disney's changes as a way to give the story a new identity, one that reflects present-day values and breaks away from the old-fashioned roles that defined characters in the past. On the other side are the traditionalists, who stand firmly behind the Daily Wire's interpretation. These fans are driven by nostalgia and a desire to see fairy tales told in the way they remember from childhood. They argue that the magic of these stories lies in their timeless romance, adventure, and the sense of wonder that comes from a happily ever after ending. For them, changing these elements is not just about updating the story. It's about erasing a piece of cultural heritage that has delighted generations.
The outcome of this rivalry could have far-reaching implications for the entertainment industry as a whole. If Disney's Snow White struggles to connect with audiences, it might prompt studios to rethink their strategy of modernizing classic stories in favor of sticking closer to their original forms. On the flip side, if the Daily Wire's traditional approach succeeds, it could open the door for more conservative media ventures to challenge Hollywood's dominance in family entertainment.
It's clear that this debate goes beyond just one movie. It has sparked a larger conversation about the future of beloved classics. Should these stories be modernized to reflect contemporary values, or should they be preserved as they were, honoring the era in which they were created? This question has divided audiences and created a compelling dynamic in the entertainment world. Ultimately, the showdown between Disney's and the Daily Wire's Snow White adaptations will come down to what viewers truly desire: a fresh, modern twist on a timeless tale, or a faithful retelling that stays true to the original. No matter which version wins, one thing is certain: this debate isn't going away anytime soon, and both sides are prepared for a battle.